Hello, my name is Bianca, and today I'm presenting a collaborative work called Mind the Gap, Designers and Standards on Algorithmic System Transparency for Users. This work has been carried out by myself, Chris Norval, Ellen Charlesworth, and Jat Singh. So in this study, we've looked at one key challenge that is there have been growing calls for more transparency in algorithmic systems with new laws as well as standards emerging. However, it is often unclear for designers how they can build more transparent systems in practice. So we have explored designers' understanding of transparency as well as the challenges they have been facing and what could help them improve transparency in the future. So our aim with this study has been to contribute towards bridging the principles to practices gap that has been identified in the responsible AI literature. And in doing so, we aim towards making algorithmic systems more responsible going forward. To do so, we've focused specifically on transparency standards. So new standards are currently emerging, setting measurable levels of transparency for algorithmic systems. And among these, we looked specifically at IEEE 7001 standard for transparency of autonomous systems, as it is among the first specifically focusing on system transparency. And this standard is currently available online and is one of the first international standards in the field. So we used it as an exemplary standard, also because it explicitly targets designers among their other audiences, and therefore it can directly impact designs. So we had 3 research questions for this project. The first one being designers' understanding of and experiences building transparent algorithmic systems. The second one was exploring the degree to which their perspectives align with standards recommendations. And the final one being understanding some key challenges and mechanisms that can support designers alongside standards in making more transparent systems. So one of the key contributions of IEEE 7001 is the 6 transparency levels that they introduce. We looked specifically at those for users, and transparency levels are described as a requirement expressed as a qualitative property of the system, which must be met, and they are supposed to be measurable, testable levels of transparency. So the standard provides 6 levels, ranging from transparency level 0, which is barely or no transparency, all the way up to transparency level 5, a continuous explanation of the behavior which adapts to the user's needs and context. For more details about these transparency levels, please refer to our paper. And we used a mixed method study. We started with a survey, which we conducted online and received 40 responses from professional designers. In this survey, we explored designers' understanding of system transparency for users, as well as their experiences of the challenges when designing transparency for users, and the understanding of the transparency levels and their potential impact in system design. We then conducted follow-up interviews with 22 designers who had previously taken our survey. In these interviews, we used an exercise based on 2 scenarios that are provided by IEEE 7001 as context in which the standard applies or could apply. And we provided each participant with a single scenario and a single transparency level recommended by the standard in this context to discuss. In this case, it was transparency level 1, 2, or 3. So our key results include, first of all, the need for more support to bridge the gap. And we mean by that the gap between the recommendations provided by IEEE 7001 and what designers consider helpful to design transparency for users is important. So, for example, in our survey, 30 out of 36 survey participants agreed that designing transparency for users is important. However, 23 out of 36 also think it is difficult to do so. And in our interviews, we found that interviewees did not find the individual transparency levels recommended by the standard appropriate in these scenarios that the IEEE recommended as examples of context where it should apply. So in other words, participants are unlikely to implement these transparency standards in these or similar contexts, and more support is needed to bridge the gap between the standard and the designer's understanding and practices when it comes to transparency for users. Another finding of a study is the fact that participants were able to identify many challenges to improve transparency for users, but also suggest tools and principles towards this. So in terms of challenges, we highlighted here that few participants know or use standards to design user-facing algorithmic systems. So this, in fact, is not surprising, as these standards are quite new, and we designed our study accordingly. However, it is important to bear in mind, as it could impact the potential impact of such standards going forward. Moreover, the term transparency is unclear to most participants. This was particularly clear when analyzing the responses from our survey. But again, many participants were keen to learn more about it, and that was shown during our interviews, in which many participants were expressing they found it interesting and important to learn about the topic. And finally, participants identify several challenges to design both transparency, but also the transparency levels provided in the standard. And we invite you to look at our paper for more details on these challenges. However, from these challenges also arise a number of opportunities to improve transparency for users. The main one being the need and possibility of raising designers' awareness about transparency. This was particularly important when we carried out our interviews, as we found that many designers and participants would contact us afterwards to provide more details and express more interest in the topic afterwards. Several designers also identified help as well as tools that they think can assist in making systems more transparent going forward. And we highlighted here some of the design principles that our participants raised for what they considered good transparency. These are obviously need more testing going forward. However, they could lead to a potential standard going forward to provide transparency for users in algorithmic systems. So to summarize our main takeaways, the gap between the recommendations provided by IEEE 7001 and what designers consider as helpful to design transparency for users is important. Participants did not find the transparency levels, which are key recommendations of this specific standard, appropriate in the context provided by, as examples provided by the standard. And more support is needed to bridge the gap between standards recommendations and designers' understanding and experiences designing for transparency in algorithmic systems. And participants identify many challenges to improve transparency in practice, but we're also able to suggest tools and design principles towards it. And finally, raising awareness among designers is essential towards bridging this gap. Thank you very much for your attention, and I invite you to look at our paper for more details about our study, and we welcome also questions from the audience.